Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Looking Back to Look Forward, Media Reflection with OKRs. So I know that many of you logged in for this webinar last week, and we too were extremely excited to talk to you about this, but unfortunately, we had to reschedule it due to technical difficulties. So sorry for that. Well, now that you all are here, let's get started with the session without any more delay. So the session will be recorded and I'll be emailing the recording to everyone after the webinar. So don't worry if you miss out on anything. We will also have a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to drop your questions in the questions panel. Well, I don't know about y'all, but it kind of feels like I've just blinked and it's already July. The past 6 months have gone so quickly that my brain is still struggling to comprehend how we're already like halfway through the year. So often people use the end of the year and start of the year to reflect on how their year went and what their plans are for the next year. But Jessica says, why wait until the end when you can improve yourself right now? So, with that, let me introduce you to our featured speaker, the one and only Dr. Jessica Brown. So, Dr. Jessica is an OKR coach and AVP of Workforce Performance at Unlock OKR. She earned her doctorate in organizational and leadership development and is an absolutely skilled OKR coach. She has worked with various business leaders to build and deliver solutions that support their business vision. And as an OKR consultant, Jessica supports and helps organizations plan and align their OKRs. She also helps them gain commitment on the OKR framework by coaching them on OKRs and helping them develop internal OKR champions. Jessica has been featured speaker at Unlock OKR's series of expert webinars on introduction to OKRs, getting started with them, and sustaining the framework. So, welcome, Jessica. I'm extremely delighted to have you here today. You can take it away now.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to come on visually and say hi to everyone before I'm going to take the video cam off and we can pay attention more to the PowerPoint. But thank you so much for that introduction. And she said it best: when we're thinking about planning and executing throughout the year, we want to make sure that we're staying aware of the progress that we've made. So now that we are in the middle of the year, right on that July 1st mark, we can potentially take the time to really think about where we've come this half of the year and what we really have to do to take it to the end of the year. So today we want to really think about why people use OKRs and why they lead to success. What's the purpose of a mid-year reflection? Some of us don't technically call it a mid-year reflection. It might just be a quarterly, but just taking time at that halfway point and why are they valuable? What does it look like? What does it contain when we're talking in our teams? How do we make these actually kind of a quality reflection? And then who should be doing the OKR reflections? So we think about OKRs. We are a very big proponent of OKRs in helping organizations because we believe that they truly bring the 4 superpowers to organizations. And with those 4 superpowers, we know that organizations are able to achieve that success by producing more outcomes than outputs and really focusing on that final value they produce and making that transition from strategy to execution. So we're not just spending a lot of time planning in the beginning and not actually completing much of the plan, but we're actually able to look at the end of the year and say exactly what we completed and what we didn't. So when it comes to those 4 superpowers, we think focus is key. When we're focusing on too much, we're not focusing on anything. And so when we bring OKRs in the pictures, it helps us say what stays and what goes, what's top priority and what's not. We also get the alignment, and it's through the whole organization. We know that all too often the strategy and the key of the organization of where it's going lies at the top of the organization. And many of the frontline employees do not necessarily know and understand that direction or even how they play in it. So OKRs brings this alignment that we don't always have in other situations. The other superpower is rhythm. This is where we actually get everyone marching and rowing in the same direction to the same pace, where we're continuously making progress. I think we've all heard maybe the slow and steady, steady and slow. Well, this is very steady, but we can actually gain speed with it too. And the last superpower is that agility, that ability to flex from quarter to quarter and adapt based on what is happening in the environment or what happened over the quarter and plan successfully for the next cycle. So this is why so many organizations are really identifying that OKRs can work for them and finding success with OKRs. But we know that OKRs and all strategic execution comes with challenges. We know that it's difficult to keep momentum when day-to-day operations and aspects come into play. So we know that sustaining that momentum is hard. How do we keep talking about our strategy and executing on it? How do we keep it part of the conversation? We don't necessarily always are able to take the time to identify the patterns and the things that are hindering us, both our individually as teams or even cross teams. And so we tend to just kind of speed through executing to check the boxes and get through what we think is meant to be done without taking time to necessarily stop and reflect, stop and recognize, are we still headed in the right direction for the right reasons, stop and look at what we've actually produced, etc. And so we tend to have limited improvement over time. We're not able to realize and learn and improve and learn and change. And so we end up losing engagement because people are more focused on the operational and our process gets stalled over the long haul. So we mostly get some momentum in the beginning after planning, but as we get to execution, we don't get there. And we know that not enough people are really clear on how they play in our game. And so even with OKRs, this can be challenging. And so what OKRs does is brings a framework to the methodology, particularly around having a quarterly review. And this is not necessarily a quarterly business review where we're looking at the financials. This is a focus on OKRs. So how the OKR cycle and review together really lead to success. OKRs as a writing framework is great, but what it also does is brings that execution cadence. And so it helps us have intentional conversations to keep us talking and focusing on what's top priority to move the organization forward into the future. It helps have us stop and recognize and ask ourselves periodically, what are our challenges? What do we continually face as barriers that we may be able to do something about so that we can gain speed and not be hindered by them? It helps us celebrate our efforts and successes. So we know as employees and as leaders that recognition is key. And not only for individuals, but for teams and the whole organization to say, this is how far we've come. Let's stop. Let's recognize each person and talk about it and celebrate as a together our efforts. We're able to improve the cycle, as we mentioned. If we talk about it, we don't wait till the end of the year to ask what went wrong. And we're able to give individuals clarity on where they play so they're more empowered and engaged. And this allows us to sustain the process over the long haul when we have multiple levels and everyone clear on how they're playing. So if we know that that's what helps lead to success, one piece of the OKR cycle that is very key is the concept of a quarterly review. Today we're focusing on the mid-year review, particularly because we are at the halfway mark of the year and we know we've only got halfway to go. So to stop and really look back and think about where we came and look forward to say, what do we really need to do to hit this home this year? So I want to ask each of you, and feel free to answer in the chat, but what would you say if you were to think about your organization and your team? How often are you coming together to truly review in a reflection type manner, to see how far we've come on our results, to ask about our challenges? So think about for yourself, for your organization, for your team, what's your current cadence? I know we have operational meetings. These are not speaking of operational daily stand-ups. This is about the strategic level. So how often does you and your organization come together? And is it mainly strategic, or are we mostly doing operational meetings and not necessarily having the strategic conversation as often or with everyone that we should be? So what's the purpose of a review? If we finally decide that we are going to improve our review cycle and get the most out of our reviews, what's the purpose? The purpose is for that team communication and collaboration. It's about making sure that we take the time to look backwards and reflect and learn to help us gain those insights and make each quarter better and better and better. Because we know practice makes pretty darn great. So we take the time to look back and reflect, we'll be much more successful when we look forward. Because we have to know how far we've come. We have to know the challenges that we face, and we have to really dive into that conversation to better improve in the future. So if we're thinking about the timing of these reviews, they tend to help us save that longer interval time. So we don't want to do a review necessarily every month at this reflection level. Are we talking about OKRs? Are we meeting once a month on OKRs? Yes, but the reflection piece is truly meant to be at that end of the quarter where we're looking back over a longer period of time. So it happens at the end of the cycle. It happens about that last week of the quarter where we're comfortable that we have the results enough to make a successful plan for the future. So this is not your typical meetings, as we said. So many organizations potentially are on an annual cycle. Either their organization and departments have written organizational OKRs or any type of goals, and can be reviewing on an annual cycle. We challenge an annual cycle to move to at least a bi-yearly cycle, again, giving us a little more agility and ability to change. Many times some organizations are on an annual cycle, but departments, teams, and individuals are on that quarterly cycle, which gives us that 3-month ability to act and then look back. This gives us more ability. But when we have our mid-year review, we take a little bit more time to look back even further and say, we've got about 6 months more to go. So for some of you, this may be a mid-year review. However, for others, it actually may be the start of your year. So many organizations actually operate on the fiscal year. So they're kicking off as if it was January for other organizations. So if this is your period for having a fiscal review, then you truly want to deep dive into the last year and say, what did we learn and what can we do better? So what do we focus on in these reviews to actually make them successful and make them valuable? The first one is got to be our successes. We have to take the time to think about each person recognizing what they contributed or what milestone they reached this quarter that they are happy about, that they feel accomplished about. So we have each person in the team share what they feel they or the team accomplished. And even better, we have the opportunity for teammates to recognize what others accomplished, where people say, yeah, I think we, as a team, we were really great because we accomplished X. I felt proud because I contributed Y and accomplished Y. And I know that Jane really contributed to the team by completing Z. So thank you, Jane. Secrets to success in celebrating those successes is encouraging each other to recognize each other. And as a leader, more importantly, role modeling it. So as leaders, we should be recognizing it. If we hear people beating up on themselves and the first thing they say is, well, I didn't really complete all of my OKRs this quarter. Well, good, that means you're setting aspirational OKRs. What do you feel you did make a huge stride on? Or what did you feel you were very successful on? This helps people not beat themselves up over not 100% achievement and become more comfortable with aspirational goal setting. And the other secret is focusing on the true outcome and the value delivered. So not going through the key results and saying, well, we accomplished this and got this number, and we got this number, and we got this number. Thinking about what those key results meant in the world of the objective. And saying, well, yes, we had 3 events. We wanted to have 3 events, but did people get value out of those events? Did we deliver the information that we really needed to? So the real outcome and success was not holding 3 events. It was providing people with awareness and information on the topic that those events were on to impact our organization or our community or whatever it happens to be. So take a minute for yourselves and think about your last 6 months or even your last quarter. Recognize and write down one success that you feel you truly achieved this quarter or the last 6 months that you deserve to recognize yourself for. And what value did that really bring in the end? So write that down and take that time for yourself. The next component of a quality reflection is identifying those challenges. And this is challenges around your accomplishment and process of accomplishing OKRs. So having each person share 1 to 2 things that they feel hindered their progress on their OKRs in the cycle. I really had trouble getting approval of some things. I really realized that it was difficult scheduling, and so we might find a better way to share calendars. What this does is it highlights those operational processes that are not serving us that we can potentially improve to gain that speed that we're looking for in growth. So some keys and secrets to successes here are remembering that successful OKRs is not 100% achievement. So when we are at 85, that doesn't mean we didn't achieve quite a bit. So most of our OKRs may not be at 100%. So focusing on the ones that are the lowest achievement and the hindrance across all OKRs. So helping team members really look and identify that for themselves. And many times we'll find across the organization and across teams that the same things are hindering numerous teams or numerous peoples. And we'll get those common themes that will help us make those operational improvements for speed. So similar to successes, take a minute for yourselves now and identify a challenge that continues to hinder you or that hindered you in this last quarter or 6 months that would be worth looking into and improving to help our organization and team gain the speed we want. And then our third component of a quality reflection is lessons learned. This is a doozy. This is a key aspect because this is the question we don't always take time to ask ourselves as a team. In this one, we ask each person on the team to share 1 or 2 things they feel they learned and will work to improve the next quarter, specifically regarding the OKR process itself. So we learned I need to go align with people when I'm writing more. I need to write better key results, more measurable key results. We need to have more conversation. I need to track better. All sorts of things that we can experience in lessons learned. But asking ourselves that question is key. And this helps us focus on actual strategic process. And we become more what we call OKR mature as we have had quarters under our belt, as we've learned through quarterly reviews what to improve each process. So the secrets to successes here are always taking that time to learn and improve. So we want to make sure that we're always doing better alignment behaviors. We're always getting to measurable and trackable outcomes and key results. And we're always writing inspirational and clear objectives. And so when we do this as leaders, and we can help learn where our team's areas for improvements are as a theme and start to help that our teams grow and our individuals improve where they're at. So similar to the other 3, it's your turn now to take a minute and recognize what lessons you could have learned from your OKR process this last quarter or half year. What stumbles in the OKR process are we not doing as well as we could or as well as we want to? Or what results are we not getting out that we want? Okay, great. So when we have these quarterly reviews and reflections, one important, very important key is to capture it. So what we tend to recommend is having a team member on every team or the OKR champion sitting in on all of these quarterly reviews and capturing those three topics: what successes, what challenges, and what lessons learned. When we have our team OKR coaches do this, they can share it to the OKR champion of the organization, and they compile all of that information and share it with everyone so that we're able to see across the whole organization what we've achieved in just 3 months, what challenges we're facing that everyone's facing, or that we could help other people not face or overcome, and what lessons we've learned. So looking at the fact that we're all learning very similar lessons, and we can learn from the lessons of each other to continuously get better. This creates a full organizational alignment, and it starts to remove silos. Yes, we want to recognize as teams what we did, but we also want to share it with the whole organization. So if we were to look at a reflection agenda, we've got 4 main components, 3 of the main we talked about, and the last one couples into the third one. So we want to focus and start on a high note. We want to celebrate our successes. We want to identify those challenges that we had in overcoming them. And you'll find that the last 2 come together. So, I learned that it's really hard to measure my KRs. So I'm going to improve by identifying more trackable KRs. So those go hand in hand, but we always want to ask, if we learn that lesson, what are we going to do differently now so that we don't continue to repeat mistakes? So in celebrating successes, we asked about what we achieve, what strides we made. With challenges, we say, where do we get stuck? Where do we prevent us from achieving our OKRs? Lessons learned, we ask, what did we learn about this quarter that will help us improve next quarter? And what do we actually commit to improving? So if we've learned all that, what 1 or 2 actions are we going to take on to actually improve? And knowing that depending on where we are in the organization, we may be talking slightly different in these reviews. At the organizational level, we're going to be talking about how all of the departments and businesses and functions are coming together. We're going to be talking about risks and roadblocks to the organizational OKRs and how to optimize that impact. In departments, we're going to be slightly smaller and localized to our team. So what results are we delivering that we expected to? What risks and roadblocks? What services performing well? What are some dependencies that are tripping us up and roadblocks, similar to those challenges and things? At the team level, we might be a little more tactical even in talking about what work is necessary to achieve in the next coming quarter, and what's off course, what happened getting it off course, and what's the right work to get it on course for the next quarter. So if we realize that OKRs are meant to help us be effective, and we utilize our tracking system to its max, we can actually improve the effectiveness of our meetings and remove them and make them less than progress updates. So we can shift our meeting habits and shift team outcomes. If we start looking at what our current meetings are, where we show up to get information, we get a status update or give a status update, and we take time then to define and understand how things are interacting amongst teammates and other teams and the dependencies that are happening. What OKRs and a tracking tool does is help us be more effective And therefore, we show up already informed about where our progress is because it's all right there in the tool. We actually show up to focus on removing roadblocks and challenges and getting people the support that they need. And therefore, we're solving those blockers first and foremost and getting right back to execution. And so what this does is allows us to leverage our OKR tool and tracking to have better meetings and conversations to maximize our time, because we all are spending tons of time in meetings these days, and it helps our team move forward faster. So this wraps us right back around to what we truly want by all of this, and that's achieving those 4 superpowers of OKR success, and truly of strategic success. We want that strategic growth and speed and agility, and OKRs helps us get there. So hopefully you'll take some time with your team to look over the 3 main concepts we talked about and really do a quarterly review to learn for the next quarter. Do we have a chat? Great, so let's take some questions before we get into our final offer. So we have a question, let me read it. Is holding OKR reviews weekly recommended, or does it seem like micromanaging? So these I would not call them reviews. So I want to distinguish reviews between typical OKR team meetings. At a minimum, we recommend OKR team meetings where we're just touching base with the team, bringing us together to talk about how we're doing and where we're going and what we need. Those we recommend at a minimum monthly. And then having a individual OKR one-on-one monthly. So with those 2 touches at the team and individual level, we don't feel that there's a need to have an OKR team meeting weekly. But some organizations do, and that works perfectly well. We find that the team meetings weekly tend to be operational meetings. So it's okay to have weekly operational meetings and focus on strategy more in-depthly once or twice a month. What I would say review-wise, so this true reflection review-wise, that's about every 3 months or whatever at the end of your cycle. This true review, stop, lessons learned piece. The team meetings are just our typical, catching up, removing roadblocks. Next question, do we need an internal OKR coach for a small startup? Need, always a strong word. I always recommend having someone internally as a coach or a champion. We call them champions as well, it depends. But we always recommend having an internal champion or coach, because having someone's eye on the prize and identifying whether people are truly following the process and engaged in the process always helps sustain the process and get the most benefits out of the process. Many times, if we just say everybody write some OKRs, we get complacency, or we get people complying, but not necessarily engaged. And so the coach can help with writing better OKRs, making sure all new employees get ramped up on OKRs. During the planning cycle, a lot of people like feedback on OKRs. So to have a person in the organization with 15 to 30, you can have just one internal champion and be okay. As the organization gets bigger, we tend to recommend an organizational champion and then an OKR coach at each department or team level to help localize the support for OKRs. And then last question, we recently started using OKRs, but still struggle with problems like not committing to the calendar or adding unclear org-wide goals. Does it take more than a quarter to feel natural about using the OKR framework? 100% yes. I mean, if you were to think about, take OKRs out of it, take the human condition and goal setting in general. As humans, we're not the most amazing creatures at setting a goal and achieving it. And OKRs is a goal setting framework. We are not the best at measuring and actually tracking metrics when it comes to goals. We're not the best at being comfortable setting a stretch number or even a number that we're afraid we might not be able to achieve, because we've been taught as humans to only put out there what you can achieve, because otherwise many times there's repercussions or consequences. So the goal of the OKR frameworks is to help change that mindset and make strategy more aspirational, a little more exciting. It does take a good challenge to get writing good OKRs, but writing OKRs in general will give you more focus than you had before. So even if you're not writing amazing OKRs or perfect OKRs or whatever those may look like, you're still writing and getting clear on the goal more than you would have before. So it is a growth process. And I always kind of use the silly New Year's resolution. How many people set a New Year's goal and actually achieve it? Organizations aren't that different. And so what we want to do is keep it in conversation and keep accountability on it, and then help get learning in these review sessions to write better OKRs each quarter. Does that answer your question? Does that help? All right. Any other questions that we have? All right. So for attending today, we greatly appreciate you coming. We know this was rescheduled and we're very apologetic for that, but we're so glad that you attended today. And we know that we're all trying to reach this execution, and we know that it's important to take time to assess and look at ourselves to see where we're at and where we can improve. So we want to offer you our free assessment to log on and look at where you're at currently in your achievement of the 4 superpowers of focus, alignment, rhythm, and agility. And we're going to offer you this to share with you and your team, and we'll provide you your free results and assessment with some feedback for you to be able to improve if you get a 30-minute consultation and results review with an OKR coach. So we'd love you to take an opportunity to truly look at how your organization is doing and how it can improve, and continue to participate in our learning extravaganzas, as we know that OKRs is helping organizations around the world truly achieve the results that they want. So thanks so much for attending. And we hope you have a great rest of your week. To strategy and beyond.